And if there's one thing I know, you can't control evil. You can lock it up, you can burn it and bury it and pray that it dies, but it never will. It just rests a while. You can lock your doors and say your prayers at night, but the evil's out there, waiting. And maybe, just maybe, it's closer than you think.
Hey everybody, this is Mo, and this is the Unified Truth Theory, Episode 1. I welcome you to join me, and I appreciate you checking this out. Here we go. Now suppose I'm going to start this out with a question. And that question to you is, when is enough really enough? Or, maybe a better question would be, when is it really time to start taking an action, rather than just complaining? Or just whining, or however you want to look at it. What point of insanity does this world have to reach before people finally start taking taking responsibility for things rather than blaming others? We have tons of people screwing things up, and people are always quick to throw words at us saying that President Obama's making mistakes, or this congressman is fucking things up, or there's always somebody to point a finger at. Well, when's it finally time to start pointing that finger at yourself? I'm guilty of it myself, so I'm not really trying to judge anybody. These things affect us all. These things that are going on worldwide are affecting us all. White, black, Hispanic, Asian, it doesn't matter, Muslim. One thing that people miss is we're all basically the same on the inside. I mean, yes, everybody has their stereotypes. White men can't dance or jump, or whatever silly nonsense is out there. When you really boil it down, we're all really the same. So throwing out stereotypes really doesn't cut it either. But I don't know how I got onto that point. But getting back to the main point, when is it time to finally sit down and start realizing that these things are happening because we're not taking action? Not because this president is doing wrong. Of course, that does have an effect on us all. But maybe we're just not speaking up enough. The police are killing people now at an exponential rate. It's gotten insane. Just last week, a 17-year-old boy was shot to death by a cop. He was originally pulled over for flashing his lights at a cop, and the cop pulls him over and asks him for his license, and this kid tries to flex his rights and record a YouTube video during the time while he was pulled over. And of course it aggravated the cop, and the kid just didn't know when to say enough's enough and stop trying to entertain whoever his YouTube fans were, and turn his camera off and stop saying this is what the world has become. Instead of that, he steadily tries to record his video and say, "Here's America, folks," which I do agree. America is a fucked up place. The whole world's a fucked up place. There isn't really where you can turn any longer that isn't screwed up in one form of fashion. Um, Technology is getting out of hand. And that's one of the things. We're feeding our own insanity. We don't know when to stop. We're trying to keep up with our proverbial Joneses, and at the same time, we're basically putting our brains in a blender by doing these things. Money. Everybody has to have it, right? I don't agree with that. But I don't actually agree that we all need money. We think we need money. The world tells us we need money. The world's set up for us to use money and abuse money. But do we really need money? Is money something that really has to be there? Does a diamond come out of the ground with a price tag already attached to it? Does gold come out of the ground with a price already attached to it? Of course, people do actually perform laborious tasks to get these items onto the market, and I do suppose that that does put a value on it. Okay, well, why can't the value just be the greater good of humanity? And I know I probably sound like a damn hippie right now, and let's just try not to use labels right now. Let's try and think outside the box where we're just all people trying to come up with a solution to an ongoing problem. And that ongoing problem is going to kill us all if we're not careful. Not to get off the subject, but they say that the world is heating up, that it's global warming. Well, maybe, maybe not. Science does also say that the sun is on an 11-year cycle, that is on a much larger cycle, and that there's heating and cooling periods. Last year it was cooler than the year before. For what I understand, 2011 was the hottest year in this 11-year cycle. So it seems like things are starting to cool off now, and we'll see at the end of the summer. We'll know if that's actually going on or not. But getting back to money, is it something that we really have to have? Is money necessary? I challenge everybody listening to this to look up the Venus Project. A man named Jacques Fresco, and no, it's not Peter Joseph from the goddamn Zeitgeist. He's trying to steal Jacques Fresco's thunder, by the way. And honestly, if Peter Joseph can do it right, if he can get this out there and do it right, I don't give a damn if he tags his name to it. I'm sure Jacques Fresco doesn't either. Jacques Fresco said that he doesn't care whether he becomes famous for this or not. He really doesn't want to. But, I challenge everybody to look up the Venus Project. A man named Jacques Fresco actually spent his entire life, not just a small portion of his life, from the time he could think to the time I think he's actually passed away now. If he hasn't, I apologize. But he spent his entire life trying to come up with a better way for humanity to survive without money. And I think he's actually got the best ideas I've ever seen. If you nerds out there, and some of you non-nerds also, look at Star Trek, or the Star Trek: The Next Generation, or whatever, and look at the way that they do not use money. They don't have money. Of course, they got things like teleporters, and I can't think of the thing that creates food, but yeah, I'm lost on that one. But anyways, they have things that create something out of nothing in a sense, or at least it appears that way. I'm sure it isn't something out of nothing, but that's a damn good idea. Everybody works towards a common goal, and they do it without money. I think it's something that's very possible. I tell you what, from right here, I'm going to cut the rambling. And years ago, I wrote a paper, and it's called the Freedom Manifesto. It's just some ideas I've had from just growing tired of things being the way they are. And I don't know, I spent a lot of my life trying to think of ways myself, just like Jacques Fresco, of ways to try and better the world. And, well, anyways, it's an unfinished manifesto. And I hate calling it that because there's been such bad tags put on the word manifesto. They put it on every fucking, every killer that's out there, every school shooter, and, whoever, they all write their manifestos. They're scary things, right? Well, anyways, it's just a word. Don't let it scare you. Anyways, this is my Freedom Manifesto. Unfinished. For far too long, we as human beings have been guided through the means of public relation, that is, propaganda, to become divided, racist, and overall self-serving species through the means of an us versus them mentality. This has been caused by manipulating natural human traits such as mob mentality and other common social traits. There is one common name that can be thought of when it comes to social manipulation, and that man's name is Edward Bernays. Edward Bernays is the nephew of Sigmund Freud through marriage. Edward Bernays learned through his uncle Sigmund Freud's research, and excuse me, I'm not the best reader, so bear with me. Edward Bernays learned through his uncle-in-law Sigmund Freud's research that there are common characteristics of human traits that allow people to be manipulated on an emotional level that will cause a physical outcome in society. The name given to such means of manipulation is propaganda, which was later changed to public relations due to Hitler and his Third Reich using propaganda in order to commit genocide. And we can argue about that. I know some people believe different. I don't weigh in one way or another. Anyways, moving on. There has been lots of study in general human behavior in society when it comes to evil actions acted out in public. It seems that the final outcome of these studies has concluded that the majority of people are overall apathetic when it comes to a scenario that does not involve them directly. This is not to say that people are bad. They have just been indoctrinated to believe that if it does not involve them personally, that is none of their business. It has become clear to me that the lessons of society show strength in manipulation and weakness in morality. This is due to the fact that a great importance has been put on the value of material possessions and less importance put on the value of human life. This type of thinking can be done away with via the means of a true cashless society, but for that to happen, we would have to unlearn everything we were ever taught. I have good news for anybody who doubts that an idea like this could ever work. If what we're taught in science class is true, then this is the way the human race started out to begin with, or history class, however you want to look at it. Now, before people start getting all up in arms about what I just said, let me make it clear that I'm not calling for de-evolution. What I'm calling for is progressive thinking from some of our best and brightest minds this race has to offer, the human race. Before going any further, I think we should look at the pros and cons of money and how it affected the history of humanity. I will only be able to list the pros and cons that are within my own memory, and I do leave this subject open for debate as I'm not the brightest when it comes to this subject, and I don't believe that any one mind should be the end-all deciding factor of such a culture-changing topic. Okay, well, I'm not the best at writing papers either, so I go on rambling for a moment before I go to my pros and cons, so bear with me on that, please. Okay, and now I say, before you get to the pros and cons, I also believe there are questions that need to be answered, like, how will I gain my possessions? That is a question that's simple to think up, but it's hard to answer. The common mentality in today's society is that your possessions are a direct reflection of your value within the social structure. Have you ever heard of the phrase of keeping up with the Joneses? This type of thinking is not only self-defeating as a human being, but is a detriment to mankind as a whole. I say this for several reasons, but I will only state the obvious. In the childish game of keeping up with the Joneses, you're wasting precious time on earth that can be used for progressing mankind as a whole in trade for a material object that will only bring momentary happiness and will most likely be obsolete before you finish paying for it. Obsolescence is another crafty trick thought up by corporations seeking to squeeze every red cent from every red-blooded human being, so in turn they can keep up with their own proverbial Joneses. Once again, I'm forced to swing back. Like I said, I'm not the best at writing papers, so here we go, we're getting to the pros and cons. Once again, I'm forced to swing back to the pros and cons of money, which after listed will be dissected even further to decide the validity of whether one is actually a pro or a con. So let's begin. The pros. Number 1. Money is necessary to survive in today's society. That is, food, clothing, shelter, etc. Okay. Number 2. Money can afford you the luxuries to make your life more simple. That is, computers, washers and dryers, vehicles, etc. You know, just anything that makes your life simpler. Bicycle, pocket watch, whatever. Number 3, money is universal. That is, every country has its own form of currency, and as far as I know, every currency can be exchanged for one another via a universal exchange rate, which fluctuates depending on the country's economic standing in the world. I know these are very few pros, but even though they are very few, they are very strong standing in the eyes of today's society. Like I said, I apologize, I'm not the best at reading. Something I don't do very often, out loud at least. I do a lot of reading inside my own head. Anyways, moving on to the cons. Okay, number 1. The current global monetary system is a mockery to the morals of humanity, in which deception and manipulation are highly rewarded, and good moral standing either yields no reward or just enough to get by. Okay, moving on to number 2. Money is the common denominator of most every crime, with the exception of hate crimes. Let's take a further look into this. Let's start with crimes that are drug related. Actually, I don't think we move any further than that, but let's go ahead with crimes that are drug related. Say, for instance, a heroin addict lost his job and has sold off all his possessions in trade for his temporary fix. What would you suppose his next move would be when his mental and physical pain from addiction is so strong that it causes him to no longer think straight? The common answer would be that he would go out and rob or steal in order to alleviate his pain. I would expect the most common response to this would be that we need to declare a war on drugs. Alright, the war on drugs, along with prohibition, is the epitome of self-defeating reactions to a common blight on society. One of my favorite sayings throughout life comes from the old TV show called The Andy Griffith Show, where one of the main characters, Barney Fife, one of his answers to a problem would be to nip it in the bud. I think that most of life's problems have an extremely simple solution if people didn't imagine them to be complex. So obviously, if the war on drugs creates the opposite effect, just as prohibition has, then why do we continue such self-defeating cycles? To sum it up, the answer would be to find the root cause of not just drug abuse, but what prompted the person in question to think they needed an escape from reality to begin with. Okay, basically what I'm saying is you're getting to the root of the problem. You know, the problem isn't the abuse of drugs. The problem is what caused that person to want to abuse drugs to begin with. And my simple thought to that is how the social structure is set up right now. There was a time where people didn't seek an outside release of reality. They didn't look for anything to help them get away from what's going on around them. And, you know, since they're looking for that now, something has changed which has caused that. It's obvious that that is the root cause of the problem, is the social structure, not the drugs, not what people would call criminals selling drugs. Those aren't the problems. The real problems is what is making people so crazy in the head that they feel like they need an escape from reality. That's what we need to look at. Number 3, money causes the human race to act barbaric during a period of time of immense technological growth. Have you ever heard of the tail wagging the dog? Money is holding back true progression. How can the human species expect to grow when we are holding on to such barbaric means of materialistic worship? Think about it like this: a world where education beyond high school is not limited to either the upper middle class or those who go without in order to better their offspring. Education should not be restricted from anyone, nor should it be rewarded to those who will only use it towards the detriment of the human race in the long run. The idea is that an education should should instill deep moral values and continue positive research when it comes to the balance of an ever-increasing human population. Believe it or not, there are people out there called eugenicists who wished to see a decrease in population through the means of genetically modified foods, water fluoridation, tainted vaccinations, aspartame, and the list goes on and on. This is what's referenced to as a soft kill, where life is significantly shortened through the means of everyday consumption. If you think these are ingenious products that just have harmful side effects, think about it again. The question you have to ask yourself is, if these things were really as harmful as I say they are, then why are they allowed to be produced? My answer to that is, do your own research and don't just listen to me. I'm going to go ahead and say something that isn't written in the paper. Look up something called Codex Alimentarius. Don't ask me how to spell it. Codex, it means food code. Codex, code. Alimentarius is just another way of saying food. Codex Alimentarius. Okay? Alright. Finding where I was just at. Just as it said that ignorance of the law is no excuse, ignorance of this will not make it go away. It would be the same as saying it's okay to poison my future. Okay? Well, there's a wrap up of the pros and cons, and we're going to go ahead and keep moving on here. Now let's dissect the pros to see if they are truly necessary. 1. Money is necessary to survive in today's society. In my eyes, this is a common misconception and is a cliche that is only solidified by ignorance. For this, I will bring up one example and will also look deep into its short fallings. My example will be the North American Indians. I don't know if this is the best example, but anyways, the North American Indians, they were a noble race of people, at least most tribes, who worked towards bettering the community. They did use a loose barter system, but their main source of income was not based on money, but to further the community. If the community was hungry, they sent hunters to gather food. If the community needed clothing, their tailors would create them clothing. Okay, now we're going to look at their downfall. And, yeah. Now let's look at the downfall of the American Indian. The main downfall of the American Indian was this tribal us versus them mentality held by the Spanish. Not all, but some. And I know this is going into South America mainly, but just bear with me. It's the same no matter whose name you tag onto it. The Irish, the French, the Spanish, we all committed genocide. When it came to that, and it was a terrible thing. Anyways, let's go ahead and just keep moving on. The point's the point. Alright. Anyways, yes, the Indians had their own tribal quarrels, which needless to say I'm not condoning. But at least it was a balanced fight where one side held no significant advantage over the other. Like I said, I still don't condone any kind of fighting. It wasn't until the Spanish showed up with their modern weapons and a bloodlust for gold and new territory is where we began to see a decrease in their population. So who is to blame in this scenario, the Spanish or the Indians? Personally, I blame neither. It's not the Indians' fault that they were not as developed in warfare as the Spanish. I mean, how could they have known that there is a bloodthirsty, gold-hungry people from a foreign country willing to wage genocide for material earthly possessions? And like I said, that goes for not only the Spanish, but whoever was involved in the genocide of the American Indians. Alright. On the other hand, the Spanish was indoctrinated to believe that gold and other material possessions were important enough to take others' lives for. So what do we gain from this story? I think the better question is, was it a win or a loss for the human race? Personally, I consider this a tremendous loss for the human race. The Spanish did not become wealthier, at least not by a large amount, and many lives were lost along the way. And yes, I did leave out the Inquisition, but the Inquisition is just another subfolder in the us versus them mentality I spoke of earlier. Okay, next, let's take a look at the banking system here in America. First, we'll start with the Federal Reserve System and how it adds to the detriment of our society here in America. When our founding fathers wrote the Constitution, they spoke of how the monetary system here in America was to be implemented and kept in check. Today, we are in a financial crisis due to the fact that we did not follow their commands. It was set in the U.S. Constitution that money was either to be gold or supported by gold. Today, we are no longer on the gold standard. We are under what is called a fiat money system. A fiat money system is extremely simple to explain. Have you ever heard of the game Monopoly? The paper money in Monopoly holds the same value as the money in your back pocket. And yes, I did just say that. The only difference between the two, well, let me repeat that again. The paper money in Monopoly holds the same value as the money in your back pocket. Think about that. Pull out a Monopoly bill and pull out the bill in your back pocket. And without any kind of bias of what you've been told that money, the value of that money has, what we call money. Take a hard look at it. You know what money is made out of? The dollar bill in your hand is made out of? It's made out of denim. Okay? So think about that really hard for a second. It's made out of denim. And yes, it has all this fancy ink and fancy little scribbles all over it and little strips of bullshit on the inside. But think about it. What gives that money value? What really gives that money value? Somebody told you it had value and you believed it. Let me say that again. Somebody told you it had value and you believed it. If you were just to, say you were born on an island all by yourself, and I know that's an impossible scenario, just bear with me. Say you were born on an island and grew up all by yourself and you had to learn to fend for yourself. And say you just became an adult, somewhere between 16 and 20. And all you knew was, the fruits of the trees and the berries on the vine and things like that was what you needed to survive. And say this dollar bill comes, or a $1,000 bill comes washing up on the shore. How the fuck is that going to help you? Is that going to do anything for you? That dollar bill that just washed up on the shore, you pick it up, you look at it. Is that going to put food in your stomach? No. Is it going to, I don't know, is it going to give you shelter? No. What is that $1,000 bill? I mean, to a lot of people, that's a lot of money in today's society. But what is that $1,000 bill going to do for you without this whole social structure having this imaginary idea that that money has value? Think long and hard about that. Think really long and hard. We're all just playing this one big fucking game. And it's all part of somebody's imagination, including yours. I'm not leaving you out. I'm not leaving me out. I just see through the deception. Okay? I'm trying to help other people see through this deception. And I apologize. I know I'm not the clearest speaker. But I'm not stupid either. So please bear with me along this. Okay. Getting back to what we were just talking about. The only difference between the two, talking about the monopoly money and the dollar in your pocket, the only difference between the two is the dollar in your wallet is understood by the public to have value, whereas monopoly money holds value within the game. That isn't different, actually. They both hold value within their own game. There are serious repercussions to a fiat money system, and that is the reason why our forefathers warned us against anything but a gold standard. To put this logically, ask yourself what item on earth held value from the beginning of history. Give up? It's gold. Yeah, I wasn't going to make you think about it for too long. I, on the other hand, think we had it wrong all throughout history. Money has led to nothing but greed, murder, and outright envy of our neighbors. Not only has money led to the things that I've just mentioned, but the current monetary system also keeps the poor poor and helps the rich get richer. Currently, in America, the top 1% of the rich in America has 40% of the money, or the wealth, however you want to say it. And over time, it will only get worse. Matter of fact, those numbers are probably off now. This paper is several years old. If this continues, this will truly bring forth a period of human history I think we can all do without. Picture slavery on a global scale. And this won't be your typical slavery. You will still be working the fields, but the master will be using the police state cronies to punish the farmhands. We're already kind of getting there. The police are pretty much shooting whoever they please. And, a story I didn't tell earlier is a cop had just also gotten away with murdering his wife in the bathroom. And he wasn't even held for 24 hours. And he wasn't charged with murder. He was charged with manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter at that, and given 5 years. So, yeah, we're getting there, people. We're getting there. This is figuratively speaking, of course. If anyone has read the book 1984, they'll know what I'm talking about. This, for the most part, has been thought of as a conspiracy. Only time will tell if this is true or not. But it is said that if you do not correct history, it's due to repeat itself, and in this case, history has not been corrected. I pretty much only go about rambling throughout the rest of this. But think about some of the points I've talked about. Think about how society is right now. Are you happy with how it is? Do you feel like you're living the American dream? Which, of course, was something that was sold to us by Hollywood. But that's something for another day. But do you feel like you're living what our forefathers promised us in the Constitution? Which, at its basics, is what we deserve as free human beings. Anyways, people, keep it real, and I don't know, look out for another video. If you like this, please thumbs it up, and I'll try and make it higher quality. Right now I'm working with a shitty mic, and I apologize for that. And it is, somewhere in the earlier parts of summer, and I do have a very hard job during the daytime, so pretty exhausted as well. So just bear with me. I'll do my best. Anyways, keep it real, people. I'm out.